care for and protect our place and our people. So welcome to those community members that have joined us via the webcast, and also those that have managed to get to the public gallery. I'm reliably informed that the traffic was bad. I've got a nod to that. So good to see people who were able to make it. I'll now declare the public forum open for the 27th of August 2024. And we're holding this forum today to hear from community members who have registered to speak on items before the council meeting tonight. And I ask that the members be listened to in silence and with respect. Also want to remind the speakers, and indeed everyone here, that this forum is being webcast. This means that your image and what you say will be broadcast live to the public and is also recorded. So please be careful of what you say and avoid making statements that may defame or offend anybody. Council is not responsible for your actions. We'll ask the staff, do you have any conflicts of interest to declare? I don't believe there are any. And speakers, please, who have registered to speak, your presentation is being live streamed and recorded, and you each have 3 minutes to address the council. There will be a warning buzzer at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and I would ask you to sort of move closer to that. And we have 3 speakers tonight, 2 speaking on item 3.7 and 1 on 3.17. So I will now ask the first speaker, Mr. Tom Copping, to speak on item 3.7, which is notification of council submission on state assessment planning plan proposal, Willara Road and Pacific Highway at Canwell. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tom Copping and I represent the proponent for the redevelopment of the Oasis Caravan Park in Canwell. The Oasis site was selected by the New South Wales Planning Department under the Rezoning Pathways program, which focuses on opportunities to rezone land in areas with high potential for increasing housing stock and maximising community benefit. To be selected under this program, the proposal had to meet several key criteria, including the provision of affordable housing. Only 5 projects were selected across New South Wales, making this development a very significant project for the coast. By delivering 675 new apartments, it will help reduce the housing shortage in a very tangible way. The Wyong Village will designate 102 apartments for affordable rental housing and 200 apartments for independent living for seniors. This represents a real social benefit for the community, and many of those affordable apartments will be key and essential worker housing, and I believe there's an item being heard later tonight, so it's a very important issue. The development will also include a dedicated public open space area covering over 1.7 hectares, or around 30% of the site. This will be comprised of parklands, open spaces, play areas for children, and a plaza space for events. Transport for New South Wales supports the project, and we will be seeking state government funding for a very significant upgrade to the Pacific Highway, Sparks Road and Wallara Road roundabout, which is currently failing under existing conditions. So in that regard, we support Council's recommendation, and over $3.5 million in state contributions will be provided by the development for these upgrades, plus several $1 million in council local contributions towards local roadworks as well. These intersections, as I mentioned, are already failing, and the development will resolve these issues for the local community. We've previously been successful in securing a $7 million grant from the New South Wales Government to upgrade a major Pacific Highway intersection in Chain Valley Bay, which demonstrates our capability to secure these outcomes. And in fact, that intersection is being built later this year. In relation to the residents living at the caravan park, we've advised New South Wales Planning that permanent residents will be offered access to new subsidised rental housing within the new development. A future house buyback scheme will also be set up after the DA for any residents who wish to leave the park. Several residents have already expressed an interest to be part of this process, and some have already sold their homes. Non-permanent tenants on the site will be given a minimum of 12 months' notice before relocation, and under New South Wales law, these residents will have to receive a minimum of three months' notice, so we're exceeding our obligation in that regard as well. This will be all formalised in a detailed transition plan, which will be submitted to the New South Wales Planning Department as part of the DA process. On the economic front, the development will provide over 630 local jobs per year and will inject about $500 million into the local economy. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And the second speaker is Linnell Ball. Welcome.
I'm shorter than others, sorry. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Hi, thank you, Mr. Hart, for allowing me to speak. I'm not normally a speaker, so please excuse my nerves here. Okay, so I'd like to say that we are in agreement with council recommendations to reject the development for the Oasis Caravan Park, also known now as Wyong Village, item 3.7. It is extremely important to our community and the caravan park to know that the council has our backs. So thank you, council, for your submission. Plus also David Harris in Parliament in March 2024 as well. I have lived at Oasis Caravan Park since 2008 for different reasons, as we all individually have. The homeowners are really stressed that their lives have been upturned and not having to say in it, fighting for everything, just simple people who want a quiet life. Okay. Also in the appendix, there's something about a 10-year thing. What is this 10-year thing and what happens in 10 years after, if anything happens? Okay. Is there any way or anything that we can do regarding the Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure about not supporting and not fast-tracking it? Also, the address states 207, 209, and now all of a sudden they're including 205 as well as in the development. This is a pilot plan. It was from the previous government, but it was for and should be still for affordable low-income housing. This development is not for that. You've got 102 units, 72 are for emergency services that we found out, so that means only 30 units will be left for the entire community. Which is not affordable low-income housing. It should be for the whole community. Plus, you want to kick out 300 to 400 people to create this. It just doesn't make sense. Unfortunately, the developers seem to be saying that they'll develop the site, but they keep changing the boundaries, and it's not for the community. Okay. The development should have been for all of affordable low-income housing. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. The homeowners have worked hard for most of their lives, blue-collared workers, and some are still working, bought these homes to live it until maybe passing away. Oh, wow. Okay.
You can keep going.
Sorry, everyone. We've got a simple one, but a good one. Our homes, it's our life, memories, lifestyles, community, interaction, affordability, health issues, aminals, family, companions. It's all about our friends, our families, not having to worry about moving, extreme rent increases, cost of moving, to have our okay life and enjoy it close to things, and the caravan has created its own community. Nothing fancy, but it's our home. But also we have stability, equity, collateral and inherence. With the units, which I actually suggested back in November, because I had done research, there just seemed to be no other place where we could go. So I thought, well, if this might get development, what about the units? And I actually suggested this. However, in saying that it's... sorry, people. But we lose everything and we go to renting, and it's not ours in the end, and it's not secured. Plus, how tiny are they? What do they look like? There's no real communication about that.
Thank you.
I do have more. Can I go on or not?
No, actually, Nell, we'll have to finish you off of that. You've spoken very well.
Okay.
You've made
one final one.
Okay.
One thing, people. One thing I did suggest, and I've got the thing to remember. Two things is, I found another place where a development could take place where it doesn't get rid of people. It's 66 Warringah Road in Camel. The council could develop it as a future for low-income accommodation and all that. And plus, the developers did a full-page ad. It was advertising. It wasn't an interview, it was an ad. So if they can afford ads, why cannot they help us with our homes?
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you very much. And our last speaker tonight is a regular, Kevin. Welcome, Kevin Armstrong. Speaking on the Council Advisory Committee dissolution.
I haven't been a regular for some time, actually, but never mind. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight, Mr Administrator, at what I understand is the last formal meeting of Council. A little bit about myself. I'm now retired. You can tell that by my looks. Just look at my face. I've lived on the Central Coast for 51 years, raised a family here, run a small business here. My career started in teaching. It involved to vocational training and construction. I've been fortunate to have management roles in private enterprise, in the government sector, and the not-for-profit sector. I've been fortunate enough to run the group training company here, Central Coast Group Training, some time back, and the Sydney Business Enterprise Centre. In 51 years, I've established a fairly wide range of community contacts in business, in the community itself, and across local government. I've been involved in establishing 2 men's sheds, a community garden, and at council level, I've been involved in the preparation of 3 community strategic plans. And indeed, the T-shirt that my wife found for me today goes back to the first of the Wyong community strategic plans that was ever developed. On the back of this is caring, prosperous and sustainable, which are the themes of that. Representation is important to our community. It's essential to our democracy. And that's particularly relevant right at the moment as we approach the new election of new councillors. Representation binds people together. In the words of our current community strategic plan, it develops a sense of belonging. That's the word that's used. A sense of connection, a sense of local identity. People respond when they're heard. And I guess it might be a bit trite to say God made us with 2 ears to listen and 1 mouth to talk. And probably we should learn to use our wisdom in that sort of proportion. Communication's about input, it's about ideas, it's about feedback, and indeed Council gets that from a number of sources. In previous years, Council had a number of precinct committees, and a couple of those still exist, but the former Wyong Council abolished those. Second way Council gets input is from formal committees, usually structured around some particular interest of the place. Toby Lakes Estuary Management Committee is one example of that. The Aboriginal Advisory Committee. There are a number of advisory committees, women's groups. There was one there about pets and so forth at one stage of the game. So there's been a range of subjects, but the characteristics of those committees are always in the community interest, not for personal benefit and not lobby group. That brings me to a sensitive issue, and I won't resolve from saying what I intend to say. I don't intend to offend anyone, I intend to unite. I ask, why is the Aboriginal Advisory Committee being treated differently to all other committees? Every committee has always been appointed for the duration of the council term, disbanded and reformed. The Estuary Management Committee, that happened to on a number of occasions, and I see no reason why the Aboriginal Advisory Committee should be treated any differently. I'm not against Dark and Young, I'm not against the Aboriginal community, and indeed I have many close friends who are part of the original Aboriginal community here on the Central Coast. I've lived here 51 years, a decade before Dark and Young was even formed under the legislation, the Aboriginal Land Rights Act in 1983. I was here for 10 years beforehand, and by then I already knew 5 or 6 Aboriginal people of this area. Last Saturday I was with Bob Pankhurst, a local horse fella, who was talking about Aboriginal rocks.
Kevin, I will have to ask you.
Okay.
You're well over time.
Yep.
You just want to finish up?
I guess I'm formally requesting, as I did in the email that I sent to the Administrator, formally requesting the dissolution of the Aboriginal Advisory Committee, treating it the same as all other community advisory committees.
Thank you. So that concludes our public forum. I will now declare the public forum closed, and of course you're all invited to stay around and watch the rest of the council meeting, which will kick off at 6:30, and those who are watching on the website. So we will do that. Thank you very much. Welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting for Tuesday the 27th of August 2024. We'll acknowledge again the traditional custodians of the land on which we live, work and play, pay our respects to Darkinjung country and elders past and present. Also, we will recognise the continued connection to these lands and waterways and extend this acknowledgement to the homelands and stories of those who also call this place home. We recognise our future leaders and the shared responsibility to care for and protect our place and people. I'll now declare the meeting open. Just a reminder, the meeting is being webcast. You should avoid making statements that might defame or offend, and I note the Council will not be responsible for your actions. Also, a reminder that filming and photography are not permitted in the chamber. Anyone observed to be filming the meeting may be asked to leave. I'm now going to do my last little welcome speech, if you like, being the last meeting that I will be presiding over. So a very warm welcome to everybody who's rocked up tonight and those watching at home tonight. As I said, this is my last council meeting. During my tenure as administrator, it's been my great pleasure to get to know members of the community and hearing about your aspirations for the future on the Central Coast. With the local government elections on the 14th of September 2024, once the declaration of the polls take place, my role as administrator will no longer be required. I am proud of the work that has been achieved since being appointed firstly as CEO and then as administrator from April 2021. Special thanks to my team in the Office of the Administrator for their tremendous support throughout my tenure and to the people who worked alongside me throughout the financial recovery. As Council continues to manage its financials in a responsible manner and its financial position continues to improve, I am confident that along with a strong CEO and executive leadership team, the groundwork is in place for the incoming councillors to make sound decisions that propel this council forward. I actually want to finish off with one final observation. Let me just start off by reaffirming that during my tenure as administrator, this council hasn't been distracted or frivolous with money. Quite the contrary. We've gone from having an approximate debt of $565 million by late 2020 to now reporting a budget surplus of $38.6 million, the third surplus in a row. Notwithstanding, as most of you are aware, for decades local government funding has decreased as a percentage of the national tax take. Meanwhile, expectations, responsibilities and services transferred to councils have increased. Put plainly, it is in my opinion that councils are underfunded. I believe that councils are significantly more productive and deliver far more dollar for dollar than any government department. But because there is so much visibility, councils cop far more flack. This is not a complex argument, it's simple. The funding model is broken, councils need a bigger slice of the tax pie. And that's why I have supported that the state government conduct a formal review of the long-term financial sustainability of councils across New South Wales. Without better ways of raising funds, the majority of councils will struggle financially in the future. This has also been highlighted by a report into local government financial sustainability launched at the ALGA National General Assembly and the Australian Council of Local Government by SGS Economics and Planning in July. That report analysed long-term trends in the financial sustainability of Australia's 537 councils and found a need for councils to be more sustainably funded by state and federal government with an increased investment in local roads and community assets and also improved retention of the local government workforce. Whatever, it's onwards and upwards, and I strongly encourage the incoming councils to listen to and engage with council staff, be it across the monthly financial reports, and importantly, continue to manage council's financials in a responsible manner. So thank you again for coming tonight. And as the last time as administrator, and it'll probably be the last time, I suspect, even when a new council comes in, I extend a warm invitation to everyone in the gallery who would like to join me at the end of the council meeting for a coffee and a chat. Item 1.1, disclosures of interest. If you have a disclosure, please raise your hand and keep it raised, and I don't believe we have any. So we'll now move with the resolution and adopt that is shown on the screen. Item 1.2, confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. I can attest to the fact that I was present at the last meeting. I've read the minutes and I believe them to be a true and correct record, and therefore I will resolve to adopt the resolution that is now displayed on the screen. Item 1.3, notice of intention to deal with matters in confidential session. I note that item 4.1 is identified to be considered in confidential session. However, I will not be going into confidential session as I have considered the paper and I'm comfortable with the recommendations. Given that, I resolve that it be noted that there are no items to be considered in the confidential session. However, we will come to that item and I will get someone just to speak briefly to it. So we will resolve the resolution that's on the screen. I have 3 administrative minutes tonight. The first one is a final report, and tonight I'm going to present that and release it. As you're aware, Council has been under administration since 30th October 2020, and we look forward to the return of councillors following the local government elections on the 14th of September 2024. Whilst this will be my last official council meeting, I will remain as the administrator until the Central Coast election results are declared. My final report outlines Council's financial crisis and recovery, our financial management measures, my advocacy to the state government about the financial sustainability of councils, my key achievements or our key achievements under administration, and my responses to the public inquiry and my key recommendations for future prosperity. In writing my report, I sought to tell the story of the Central Coast Council as we navigated what has become known as the worst financial crisis in the history of New South Wales local government. I want to acknowledge that while the unlawful use of restricted funds occurred, external audits confirm that no fraud, corruption or criminal activity took place to cause the financial issues. My report documents Council's journey through turmoil and crisis to transformation and recovery. While I describe the tough decisions that had to be made, it's also a celebration of how far we've come. Importantly, it tells the story of community resilience and strength in the face of adversity. I wholeheartedly thank our residents for their support and patience as we continue to recover and rebuild. I am proud of the achievements Council has made to develop and implement Council's long-term financial recovery plan, meeting all key milestones and targets put in place in late 2020. It is pleasing to note that Council's financial performance has stabilised and its financial position continues to improve. I'd like to thank everyone who played a role in Council's recovery and personally express my sincere thanks to Mr Pearson AM and Ms Natalia Cowley for those early works. I acknowledge also and thank CEO David Farmer and our executive leadership team for their hard work and positive approach to achieving goals and adopting the new processes that support recovery, including monthly financial reporting. I'm confident we have the right team in place to build on what's been established. Thank you also to Council staff who have continued to work diligently for the community they serve through what has been a very unsettling time in their working lives. It is gratifying that I step back from my role as administrator, feeling positive about the future for the Central Coast. I look forward to the outcome of the election and voters' decision on the referendum. I encourage our new councillors to acknowledge the past and learn from the mistakes that were made while focusing firmly on the future. Working constructively together, demonstrating strong leadership and respecting the perspective of other councillors will be key to making good decisions in the best interests of the whole community. I've enjoyed working constructively with the Central Coast Council, the state and federal members and this great community. I urge you to read my final report to understand the journey we've been on and the path that lies ahead. And with that, I will formally move that the administrative minute be received and noted. I'll move on to the second administrative minute, which is item 2.1, and that's around the Central Coast Water and Sewer Legislative Framework changes. On the 28th of July 2023, the Minister for Water endorsed the commencement of a review into Central Coast Council's Water and Sewer Legislative and Regulatory Framework. As a result of that review and my advocacy, on the 8th of August 2024, the New South Wales Government passed a bill confirming the governance model for Central Coast Council's water and sewer function. The bill confirms that the water and sewer function will operate as a local government water utility retaining Central Coast Council's water, wastewater and other water-related services as a council activity under the Local Government Act 1993. In addition, it also removes the Central Coast Council's current designation as a water supply authority under the Water Management Act 2000 and repeals the Central Coast Water Corporation Act 2007. This bill effects a change to the Local Government Act and removes, most importantly, the restriction on moving funds between the Water Supply Fund and the Sewerage Fund, which increases our ability to prepare for debt-funded asset delivery. This will assist in increasing service agility and means that funds are able to be managed strategically in order to meet the needs of priority asset delivery. A number of other transitional arrangements will be introduced to enable this change, including retaining the water supply and sewerage charges made under the Water Management Act 2000 for 24-25, charging until the end of the charging year, to enable Central Coast Council to continue to charge the stormwater drainage charge under the Water Management Act 2000 until 30th of June 2026 and retain the current IPART price determination for all charges covered. The changes resulting from this bill are expected to come into effect in September 2024. Bear in mind this was all put forward by Ms Cowley and Mr Person and myself to the public inquiry. It became very plain to us when we joined the organisation here that trying to manage a council's operation under a state-owned enterprise act and drag, i.e. the Water Management Act, was not possible, and it was causing immense problems. And as I said, when we had nearly $90,000 at one stage sitting in a sewer reserve and sort of negative territory in a water reserve, and we couldn't cross-use the money, which is what Hunter Water and Sydney Water are able to do. With this change in this bill, we will then be able to do the same thing. We will also still be under regulatory control by IPART. And with that, I will move to note that Administrator's minute as shown on the screen. Item 2.3, it's the CEO performance review, and we had to try and make sure we completed that because I set the performance review for the last financial year, and I also wanted to make sure that the performance targets for the CEO were set in place early on in the current financial year. So the process was, I had a help from outside by an expert in the field, and we looked at the targets and we assessed the CEO, and he overall, the CEO, Mr Farmer, received a ranking of 4.05 out of 5, which is an extremely good result. And I think you can see with the results of the financials and other things that things were pretty much in control. We have put in place a revised performance agreement, which is current for the current year, but I would note that the elected body, when it comes in, does have the ability to add, modify or change that if they so desire. But what it does mean is the CEO does have some targets with the executive team to get underway with before the other body comes into play and a performance review committee is established. So with that, I shall move that, and to note particularly that the TRP or the pay of the CEO will not be changing as a result of this performance review. So with that, we'll move those resolutions and that CEO performance review, item 2.3, as shown on the screen. And we will now move to, I think, probably what is the, for me, probably the main result for the day, which is the draft 2023-24 financial statements, the Central Coast Council and the Central Coast Council Water Supply Authority. And I'm going to ask the acting CEO, Marissa Rakalamara, to actually talk to this and celebrate the good news.
Thank you, Mr Administrator. Tonight I'm really pleased to present Council's annual financial statements for the financial year ending 30 June 2024. These documents must be prepared to meet the requirements of the Local Government Act, and they're also used to report back to the community on how Council has performed financially and to identify any areas for Council to focus on in the future. As the community is aware, Council was placed into administration due to inadequate financial management leading to a financial crisis. In response, during the period under administration, the focus has been to repair council's financial settings and the associated processes. This will be the second year in a row that council is on track to meet legislative timeframes and standards for the presentation of draft financial statements, which underscores our strengthened capacity to comply with the requirements set by our regulators. As well as delivering the financial recovery plan, over the last 2 financial years, council has significantly improved its financial processes and delivered financial statements that satisfied audits undertaken by the New South Wales Audit Office that were completed within the legislated timeframe. There's some significant details included in the documents presented tonight attached to the report in the business paper. However, I'm just going to run through a few highlights to promote council's success in not only restoring but also maintaining a sound financial position during the period under administration and where we're heading in the future. So on the screen you can see the operating result each year since 2018-19. In the first 3 years, council was spending more money than it had available, therefore dipping into savings and going backwards. Council has progressively turned annual operating losses into appropriate surpluses. This means council's performance now favourably exceeds one of the most important indicators of council's financial health. During 23-24, council has achieved an operating surplus of $38.6 million, and over the last 3 financial years we have accumulated surpluses totalling $114 million. And whilst this is a great outcome, it's still short of the over $160 million in losses accumulated over the preceding 3 years. Our focus going forward is achieving sufficient surplus to make up the gap and to remain sustainable over the longer term. In addition to achieving a good operating result, we've also managed our cash flow well. During the year, we have paid down more than $100 million of borrowings, including one of the emergency loans taken out during the financial crisis. At the same time, we were able to draw down the first $10 million to deliver the upgrade of the Marty Water Treatment Plant project. This project is a really good example of good debt. The project will benefit many generations to come, so spreading the cost over many years by borrowing is the fair approach to take. Looking back, council's debt at the commencement of the administration period was just under $350 million, and now we're at less than $200 million. During the financial year, we added more than $360 million to the value of our community's roads, drainage, buildings, and water and sewer infrastructure assets. We have invested over $170 million in renewing our community's assets, as well as addressing shortfalls in renewal expenditure accumulated over previous financial years. Over the last 3 years, we have increased the proportion of assets that are in the required condition, reducing the backlog from 2.62% to just over 2% of the value of council's assets. And although this doesn't sound like much, during the same period, the value of our assets grew from $10.6 to $12.1 billion in replacement cost. So that 0.5% difference is a really significant dollar investment. In terms of cash flow, we have managed amounts owed to council effectively and considering our ratepayers' ability to make payments. We have paid our bills on time and earned interest on money until we needed to use it. Our ability to cover amounts that we are liable to pay is measured through the unrestricted current ratio. We have continued to be better than the benchmark, achieving 2.77 compared to a benchmark of 1.5. Our cash position remains strong in 23-24. As at the end of June, council had total cash of $773 million, and that's the dark blue bar on the graph up on the screen. Most of this cash is restricted or set aside for specific purposes, and that's the lighter blue bar there. The red and green bars are the amount of cash that is not restricted for specific purposes. As you can see, in 2019-20 and 2020-21 financial years, council had negative cash. What this means in practice is that council was expending restricted cash for purposes outside lawful expenditure items. Since then, council's available cash position has turned and is now at a healthy level at $104 million, whilst we have continued to provide services and investing in infrastructure, as outlined earlier. Overall, for the 23-24 financial year, Council has maintained a stable and sound financial position, achieved a positive operating result whilst delivering services and investing in infrastructure, and of course, maintaining adequate cash. This position provides a strong foundation for the incoming Council to be able to adequately respond to community expectations. Over the past 4 years, we have rectified issues with cash flow, restriction management, and the operating result. Building on this foundation, the new Council will need to focus on 2 key areas. Firstly, it will need to ensure it has a recurrent revenue base that can sustain existing services, provide continued investment in infrastructure, and support growth on the coast. The main challenge will be to remain financially sustainable by maintaining current levels of income. Currently, we maintain assets on a priority basis driven by risk and are limited by resourcing and balancing other expenditure areas that are important to our community. So although we have reduced the asset backlog and kept on top of asset renewals each year, the second area of focus will need to be an increased investment in asset maintenance. Over the next few years, we will continue to engage with our residents to understand the service levels that they expect and are willing to contribute to, and to identify the services that are most important to them. Council's financial statements have been prepared in accordance with the applicable legislative and other mandated requirements and reflect a prudent and professional approach to financial management and the associated processes. I recommend that the annual financial statements are presented in the business paper, assigned and referred to audit. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. There's not a lot to add, really. The results pretty much speaks for themselves. I will add a couple of points. The first one is that we put, and we always should, and we did, put the financials through the External Audit and Risk Committee. So that went through the Audit and Risk Committee last week, and they were more than happy with the results. And during that discussion, we also had the New South Wales Audit Office present, and again, they were confirming, subject to final audit, that what we've put forward now is pretty much the correct thing, but that is still subject to the absolute final audit by Audit New South Wales. The other key thing I want to point out, it is no mean feat to actually get the financials together. I was just looking here and doing a quick calculation. When I first arrived here with Natalia in November 2020, we were still looking at the 1920 financial year. It wasn't till May 2021 that we actually got the finances to Audit New South Wales. So if you think that's 10 months later or something like that, later than we've actually done it this time round. So again, you can see a dramatic improvement, not just in the result, but also in the processes that we use as to how we can get there and do our close off, do our accruals, do all the other things which we need to do at year end, and get to a number in a very timely fashion. That also means that it means for the new council coming in, they know what the position they're starting from, and also they will very quickly be looking at a long-term financial plan and coming to grips with what that might look like out into the future as we try to lock in that full-blown sustainability picture for the future. So with that, I'm just going to commend the staff for getting the result that they have, and for also getting the accounts up to, where's Emma? I think she's, oh, there she is, CFO, actually getting that up to speed. Well done, it's a great effort, and thank you very much for you and your team for doing that. With that, I will move all those recommendations that are shown on the screen and make those as a decision of council. We'll now move to items 3.2 and 3.3, which we'll consider together. And I'm going to ask the Acting Director of Corporate Services, Emma Galea, who is Acting Corporate Services, not the CFO today, but tonight. But, away you can go.
Thanks. This month's financial report focuses on how Council's results for 23-24 financial year compared to the Council's adopted budget. Last financial year, Council has performed better than budget by just over 12 million. 7.3 million of this surplus is proposed to be restricted towards organisational priorities, including a transfer of $5 million to the emergency loan repayment restriction. This will add to the funds that are being set aside each month to enable the full repayment of the remaining emergency loan in November 2025. Funds have also been put aside for strategic priorities, including the continued strengthening of Council's governance. Council's income was favourable to budget by $18 million due to higher than anticipated interest income on Council's investments due to a very favourable interest environment. Council also had additional income from various areas, including holiday parks, leisure centres, library and education, and regulatory activities. This reflects our community's increased use of facilities. Council also received more operating grants than it had budgeted for. Council's expenditure was favourable to budget in materials and services and resourcing costs. This was offset by expenditure arising from a review of assets' current conditions and the associated rate of depreciation. In 23-24, Council spent $133 million and had a further $23 million committed in delivering the capital works, which at the start of the financial year was set at just over $200 million. The receipt of grants and being able to bring some works forward enabled Council to increase this budget significantly during the year. The report also proposes some changes in timing for the delivery of some identified projects in the current financial year. This will ensure project delivery milestones remain aligned with the budget allocation in the financial year. Income and expenditure trends, as observed in last financial year, will be used to inform the development of next year's budget and the ongoing update of the long-term financial plan. This will ensure that funds can be allocated in an optimal and effective way, supporting the incoming Council to focus on the priorities identified earlier tonight. Moving into the current financial year, Council now has commenced delivering the 24-25 operational plan. As reported in the July investment report, Council continues to hold adequate cash, with $788 million being held as at the end of the month. Monthly full financial reporting will resume in October. It is recommended that the financial reports are noted by Council. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. Probably not a lot to add to that as well, because it's obviously similar. I guess the important things to note are the fact that we're putting more, a bigger payment towards the emergency loan restriction, which is another $5 million being chucked into that, which we can clearly afford, and 2.3 is set aside for future projects for the 24-25 financial year. So with that, I'm going to move both of those item 3.2 and 3.3 with the recommendations that are shown on the screen. And we'll now move to item 3.4, which is Safer Cities Her Way, and Ms. Smith is going to speak to that. Again, a very interesting result.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. The Safer Cities Her Way project was a program stream under the Transport for New South Wales Safer Cities. It was a $30 million investment to trial place-based solutions to improving perceptions of safety. So the Safer Cities Her Way was a project that looked specifically at improving perceptions of safety for women, girls and gender diverse people who travel to, through and within public spaces and transport hubs. Three key elements...
Can we just have some quiet, please? Yes, otherwise you'll be going. Continue, please.
Three key elements of the project were we were required to use a co-design principles with the community, trial interventions around transport hubs, and evaluate the projects at the completion. The location that was selected was the Gosford Transport Interchange, which included the railway station as the focal point, the bus interchange, taxi rank, commuter car park, and a 1 kilometre radius surrounding the railway station. Gosford Transport Interchange is one of the main public transport entry points to the Central Coast, with in excess of 6,000 commuter movements daily. The popularity and visitation to the CBD over the years has declined in direct comparison to the increase in antisocial behaviour and declined perception of safety for commuters. We found that the community was particularly interested in voicing their thoughts and ideas on the subject matter, and we received an overwhelming response to our community survey and interactive map. People wanted to weigh in and cared about being heard on the subject matter. As you can see, we received 3,500 community responses and over 136,000 pieces of data. So the pre-intervention results show that over 64% of people felt either unsafe or very unsafe at night, and 35% felt the same way during the day. The results were broken up into 5 key areas: the Gosford Hospital Precinct, Gosford Station, Burns Place Park, Kibble Park, and the car park. The data demonstrated 3 key themes that affected the perceptions of safety as people moved around the city. They were lack of vision, lack of beautification, and lack of activation. So, utilising the ideas from the community and stakeholder workshops, we designed the following interventions to address the key themes. This is an image of Burns Place Park prior to the interventions, and this is, next slide, thank you. And this is the images of Burns Place Park after the interventions. So it gives greater line of sight, which improves perception of safety. A series of lighting activations, some permanent, like the lighting in Man Street Laneway and uplighting of the historic palms in Burns Place Park, were used in Gosford. There were other temporary lighting activations around the city for the Gosford Good Times Summer Series. The displays were a draw card to the city during the evening and increased visitation and activation. So this is an image of Man Street Laneway prior to the interventions. And this is an image of the installations, the festoon lighting and the murals that were placed in Man Street Laneway.
Can I ask you, I'm going to warn you, next outburst from you, I'm going to ask security to move you because you are, other people want to hear this. Continue.
Thank you. This is an image of William Street Plaza before interventions and the interventions after the images of the interventions that were in place. So we removed the installations that were previously in the laneway. There was also a placement of family-friendly ground murals in Kibble Park next to the playground equipment, achieving a sense of beautification and activation with a light show during the summer series. A series of wayfinding decals were installed to direct people around the city via the safest route, as well as directional maps and signage. The car park had some art added with murals and a partnership with Sporting Hall of Fame to celebrate our local sporting heroes. The car park also had programmable coloured lights installed on the outside of the building. These can change colour and patterns to reflect the cultural, sporting and seasonal events throughout the year.
So you're continuing to be disruptive and are intruding on the ability of others to hear the business being considered. Accordingly, under clause 14.14 of the Code of Meeting Practice, you are expelled from the meeting and I require you to leave the chamber. Well, that's even better still. I'll see you on the foyer. Yep, no problem. Yep. Thank you. You may resume.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. At the conclusion of the interventions, we went back out to the community to find out what did and didn't work, what interventions changed the perceptions of safety for the community and had the biggest impact. We knew that pre-interventions, 7 out of 10 participants had negative perception of safety. Our survey and workshop feedback post-interventions show that this had improved following the interventions, with now 1 out of 10 people having a negative perception of safety, which is a significant improvement. Most effective intervention being activations and lighting. So after the interventions were deployed, 37% of participants felt very safe and a further 57% felt safe. It's an improvement of 28% and 31% respectively. This is a heat map and demonstrates the comparison of the CBD 12 months apart, pre and post interventions. The images on the left are 12 months before the interventions in the same period, so December to January period. On the right, during interventions at the same time of year. You can clearly see an increase in activity, more people staying for longer periods of time. Burns Place Park and Kibble Park in particular were well utilised, and the Main Street also has a significant amount of increased activity and visitation. So we want to see the momentum of the success of the project continue. The results will form part of future plans and strategies and continued partnerships with local businesses and community to roll out learnings. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. Well, I found this quite an amazing report. For $1 million being spent on basically sort of lighting, street art, clear sight lines, and so on, I thought it was an amazing result when you can actually change a 7 out of 10 in favour of being negative to a 1 out of 10 by just literally spending that sort of money. So I think for our largest, if you like, city on the coast, being Gosford, it augurs really well if we can continue some of those programs, and I believe the state is looking at continuing that program. So a great opportunity for us to do even more there and get even better outcomes. But yes, I just thought it was a fabulous outcome for the effort that went in, and again, congratulations for the staff for coming up with all those great ideas to try and improve the safety perception. So with that, we will now move to note the contents of that report and the learnings as per the resolutions that are shown on the screen for item 3.4. Move to item 3.5, which is the draft public toilet strategy for public exhibition. I'm just wondering why they gave that to me on my last day here, but anyway, not whether they're trying to tell me anything or not. Mr. Bolgoff, you might like to explain.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. I do have a brief presentation on the draft public toilet strategy. Just pointing out that in developing the strategy, there was a lot of analysis. So there was a strategic review of the existing council policies, strategies and guidelines. There was also an asset review, having a look at condition of the assets and the demand management in the areas as well. Council did consultation in relation to internal, so with the main staff areas, as well as some community consultation with some focus groups. That got us to a point to be able to present this draft strategy, having the opportunity to look at the design guidelines, look at the priorities for the public toilet works, and rationalise the number of toilet facilities. So we have got 212 sites across the local government area. We'll be able to rationalise around 11 of those sites, and what we have found is that we would need an additional 26 new sites. However, these are funded through developer contributions. Just the next slide. Just a little snippy on the right is an extract from the strategy, and as I mentioned, there's a lot of information that went into the development, and one of the metrics that is considered is like a 600 metre radius. So that little snippy on the right shows location and some toilets and the 600 metre radius. There's also other metrics such as the population ratio. One of the things used in benchmarking is looking at around 0.55 to 0.6 per 1,000 people of population. Other things that were considered in the document was the open space hierarchy, the number of facilities, so your local paths, cycleways and pedestrian paths for the transit paths, the availability of the site, accessibility, and the condition. With the process, We've been able to standardise the design. So this assists our maintenance people with the kits of parts so that if there is some vandalism or damage, we can go in, we'll have materials ready to be able to a swift and speedy repair. A couple of examples on the screen at the moment showing a single facility as well as a multi-facility there on the left-hand side. We have been able to look at improving the technology in relation to the opening and closing. There's a significant cost in sending people around now to open and close these facilities. We'll be able to automate those, which will then reduce our cost and offset the additional cost in maintenance in relation to undertaking, or once we build the new facilities. So the reports to go on exhibition for at least 28 days, Mr Administrator, which we would then consider the submissions and then do an additional report to the elected council following that consideration to adopt a public toilet strategy. Thank you, Mr Administrator.
Thank you. Yes, I never realised there was quite so much science, inverted commas, behind all of this. Anyway, what is good to see, public toilets, generally speaking, across most council areas are one of the most complained about asset classes that council operates and runs. So it is good to see that we are actually putting in place a strategy which is looking at right across the 212 odd toilets blocks that we have right across the Central Coast. It's a big program and it's going to take some years, but it's good to see that the staff are contemplating putting in a regular amount of renewal money out of the depreciation line to actually start funding upgrading a number of these facilities. The new ones, of course, will be funded hopefully more from developer contributions, 711 or 712 funding, which again will enable those to be upgraded and or new ones. So all in all, I think it's good to get it out for consultation. It's another document that we'll be able to come back to a newly elected body for them to think about and perhaps look at some of the priorities of which might come first. I'm sure that will be highly debated around this table here. Anyway, we will leave that for later and we'll resolve now to adopt the resolutions to endorse the strategy to go out for consultation. Item 3.6, which is the draft update community land plan of management for public exhibition. And we have Matt Corridon, who's the Acting Director for Environment and Planning, going to talk to that.
Thank you, Mr Administrator. This item relates to the proposed update to the 2023 Community Land Plan of Management. And I'd like to thank at the outset the community who has formed a pivotal part in providing representations and submissions as to land to bring into the plan of management. Let's go back one slide, please. So the purpose of this item is to provide information about the process of managing community land via plans of management, to report on the work already done, including pre-consultation to prepare the proposed update, and to seek approval for council to take relevant actions, including public exhibition and public hearing activities to progress the update. Just by way of background, public land that's managed by council is put into two categories, operational land and community land. For clarity purposes, this item only relates to land that's designated as community land, not operational land. And as you'll see in that image on the screen, community land is further broken down into 5 categories. 2 of those also have subcategories. Council manages over 5,500 lots of public land and New South Wales government land. About 2,500 of those are classed as operational land, another 2,500 classed as community land, and another 700 of lots are New South Wales government-owned land managed by council. Council adopted an area-wide plan of management for community land in 2023. It's an essential tool for managing community land across the coast. Most council-owned land, but not all, is included in that current plan of management. Because it is essential, other community land needs to be added to the plan of management to ensure that it's managed effectively. Part of this work, as I said at the start, is work that's been supported by the community to get those items of land into the community land plan of management. The current plan of management covers about 2,300 lots. And as I said, it's categorised as general community use, park, sports field. Natural area, for example, is subcategorised as bushland and foreshore. The community land plan of management obviously covers rules on how that land can be used and managed. A schedule of land is included in the community land plan of management and maps to show how that land is categorised. There is another plan of management underway to manage Crown land that's managed by council on behalf of the state. What are we proposing? We're proposing to update the community land plan of management by bringing in 160 plus lots of land into that plan of management, recategorising some land, not from community land to operational land, but the subcategories within the community land to make sure they're fit for purpose for that land, to allow further feedback to be taken on board from the community. There has been extensive investigation following some of that representations about how that land is to be included and the categorisation of that land. There has been early engagement with stakeholders. That early engagement has been documented and is attached to the report. And if the recommendations are adopted, the proposed update to the community land plan of management will go to formal consultation. Probably not the most easiest slide to read. What the slide shows is just a snapshot of some of the consultation that's occurred to date and some of the lots of land that's proposed to be included. You will find in one of the attachments to the report a schedule of land. What this does is breaks down that into visual maps that allow the community to clearly identify what the land is that we're proposing to manage or proposing to include in that plan of management. The key considerations: council must undertake public exhibition of the proposed community land update. It's proposed to start on the 23rd of September and run for at least 28 days. Public submissions will be accepted for at least 42 days. Council must conduct public hearings of the proposed update. They're to be conducted by an independent person, and they must consider the categorisation or recategorisation of the lots to be included in the update. After a review of the submissions and the public hearing report, a further report will be made to council in early 2025 with the outcomes of those items and with a final recommendation in relation to the update. Provided on this screen, Mr. Administrator, are the recommendations from the report.
Thank you. That was a very clear and concise explanation of what we're actually doing here. So we're taking the existing plan of management, which covers, approximately 2,300. We've got some new lots, and there was some discussion around some of the previous lots that had been previously exhibited. So what we're doing is going out to the community with the staff have looked at this and then put in place what they believe to be the most up-to-date and the most appropriate categorisation. And those will now go out to the community from, I think it was somewhere around the late September. And the public meetings will be held where they'll be run independently. People will have the opportunity to put their views forward on whether they agree with the staff viewpoints or not. And then all of that will get consolidated into a report and come back to the new elected body. So all we're doing is getting the thing out and underway, and the elected body will be the final determinant on what the categorisations will be for those extra 200 lots that we're looking to add in. So with that, I'll move the recommendations for 3.6 as shown on the screen and make those as a decision of council. And we'll move on to item 3.7, which is also, Mr. Corridon, which is the notification of council's submission on state assessment planning proposal, Willara and Pacific Highway in Canmore. And I think we had two speakers on that. And you may want to comment on a couple of the comments that were made.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator, and thank you to the speakers that attended the public forum before. I note that one was on behalf of the developer, and then obviously one was on behalf of a resident of the subject land that's under consideration, and appreciate the feedback in relation to council's position. This item relates to providing council with an update on what the nature of that submission was, to outline council's key concerns in relation to the proposal, and to seek approval for council's chief executive officer to make further representation to relevant ministers in respect of those concerns. By way of background, the state assessed planning proposal process seeks to enable direct consideration by the now Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure of proposals that are of state or regional significance. The Canmore Oasis SAPP was one of 5 nominated for that, for inclusion in that process. Council is a stakeholder only, and it's important to note is not the determining authority. Council has participated in the assessment process to ensure local knowledge is available to the state government when undertaking their assessment. The proposal was exhibited from the 27th of May until the 24th of June, with council staff submitting an objection. New South Wales government agencies have been consulted in accordance with the statute requirements for rezoning. This slide just shows the locality of the subject site, and as one of our speakers spoke to earlier this evening. You'll see on the screen it is currently the site of an affordable housing caravan park that obviously residents on the Central Coast habitate. On this slide, you'll see what the proposal looks like. And obviously, there has been some discussion around the dwelling density and the variable height, and there has been some some changes to the proposal that are looking to increase the density as a result of those changes. The key issues for council is that there appears to be a lack of strategic merit, overdevelopment of the site, and disproportionate scale for local centres without the supporting infrastructure. And in fact, the lack of infrastructure has been one of the key themes of council in its objection. Traffic and transport issues remain unresolved, particularly in relation to intersection upgrades that remain potentially unfunded. Displacement of residents is obviously another key concern for council. And obviously we are not opposed to affordable housing on the Central Coast. There's an inadequate assessment of ecological values at the site. It's not supported by a current development control plan. Affordable housing is untested in this locality, and we believe that it's poorly designed public space as part of the proposal. This slide just shows essentially a broader overview of what the key concerns are discussed in the previous slide. Our key considerations are that the exhibition period itself has closed, and the state government are finalising their assessment of the proposal. Agency comments have been provided by stakeholders and received by the state. The state has advised that they are proceeding to prepare mapping and finalising the documents as a matter of priority that relate to the proposal. The state also continues to update council on the progress of that proposal. Any future DA, from what we understand, is likely to be lodged as a state significant development and further assessed by the state. And the recommendations from the report, Mr. Administrator, on the screen.
Thank you. Yes, I find it quite bizarre that the government is contemplating this when their own Central Coast Regional Plan 2041, this project is completely inconsistent with that. It's inconsistent with the interim local strategic planning statement. It's inconsistent with our own Central Coast local housing strategy and also the statutory planning framework. So when you've got all those things against you, find it quite hard that they actually are still going ahead with it. It's also, and it's mentioned in the paper, that it will start competing with our other centres of Tuggerah and Wyong and Toukley and so on. So it's just not a good idea to be doing it. And we talk time and time again about the need for infrastructure to come in before you put these sorts of things in. So while I'm highly sympathetic to the idea of more accommodation, more affordable housing and all the rest, it's got to be in the right place, and it's also got to have the appropriate infrastructure in before things are built. And that's something that I think both sides of politics need to get a grasp about, that it actually needs to be in before you build things, because otherwise you get that chaotic situation and then things don't get funded and aren't funded, and you just get chaos persisting. So definitely I strongly support what the submission that went in from the staff, and I hope that the government will take heed of our comments. And with that, I will move those recommendations as shown on the screen. I move to item 3.8, which is the reclassification of some public land that we have acquired for the Ocean Beach and Rawson Road intersection, which has got some funding from the federal government. But I'll let Mr. Corrigan speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. This item relates to the proposed classification of land at 46 to 48 Ocean Beach Road, Woy Woy. The purpose of this report is to outline why Council is seeking to acquire this portion of land. to explain why this land, if it is acquired, must be classified as operational land, and to seek approval to undertake the necessary public notification regarding the proposed reclassification. This slide just shows the locality and the intersection in question that this proposal relates to. This parcel of land is required to be one acquired by council and then classified as operational land to allow the intersection upgrade to occur. As stated, need to acquire this land to allow for this work to occur. The acquisition of this site, if it goes through, which was authorised by council resolution last month, I believe, is required to facilitate the upgrade of the intersection to reduce traffic congestion. I understand this to be a problematic site regarding traffic. After the intersection upgrade is complete, part of the site will be surplus to council's requirement, and this is why it's leading to the classification of land as operational land so that it can be sold. Council has reached agreement with the owner to purchase the site at fair market value, with the contract of sale entered into in late July, prior to the start of the caretaker period. As previously mentioned, the acquisition of this land is required for an essential road widening project, with the balance of land not associated with that project to be resold after this project is complete. To facilitate the sale of the land, or the balance of the land, sorry, it must be classified as operational land, and if so, ongoing and more formal consultation will be undertaken regarding that proposal. Key considerations are that the sale of the subject site is due to complete in September 2024. The proposed classification of the land must go through a period of public exhibition and consultation. Council must consider any submissions received from the public during that time, and after review of submissions, a further report will be made to Council in late 2024 with the outcomes of those items and a final recommendation made to Council. Mr Administrator, the final recommendations are on the screen.
Again, very well explained, I think, and this just follows on from the decision in July of this year that I made to reclassify, for the council to compulsorily acquire the site in order for that intersection to be upgraded and also to be able to accept the very generous funding from the federal government to complete that project. So this is just to make sure that once it's purchased, we can then get rid of the surplus bits that are left over, which therefore have to be operational. So with that, I'll just move those recommendations that are shown on the screen for item 3.8. And then we'll consider item 3.9 and 3.10 together, as they're very similar. So Mr Loader, from Water and Sewer, just have a wee break from our general rate area.
Very good, Mr Administrator. Thank you. Items 3.9 and 3.10 relate to the draft drinking water quality and draft liquid trade waste policies. Both of these policies are due for review and renewal. The draft drinking water quality policy reaffirms Council's commitment to provide drinking water in accordance with the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines. There are no significant changes to the policy, only minor amendments to assist the community in understanding the requirements and the intent of the policy. The draft liquid trade waste policy is also a legislative requirement to ensure that commercial and industrial sewage discharges do not cause any damage or impact on Council's sewage assets or the downstream environment. The draft policy includes minor amendments to better explain and define the requirements of the policy. However, there are no changes to the actual requirements within. That policy has also received concurrence from the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water, and meets Council's regulatory requirements. Thank you, Mr Administrator.
Thank you. These are very, very minor amendments to the existing policies. Quite happy to adopt both of those, so we'll adopt the recommendations for 3.9, 3.10 as shown on the screen. We'll move to item 3.11, which is the draft social media policy. Now, we're taking the existing policy that was developed on the basis of the advice and the template from local government New South Wales, from the Office of the Local Government, in fact, not the political body. And we've added a section into it to ensure that councillors, when they come on board, will actually maintain two profiles. One, their council profile, and the other, their personal profile. What the policy is saying is that you cannot mix the two, that you are to keep them separate. This will ensure that the communication lines from the council side are clear and speaking as one, if you like. So we've put those changes in place, and we'll put that policy now out for consultation. And again, that will come back and can be reviewed by the incoming elected body. With that, I'll move to endorse the policy for exhibition and note that as a decision of council. Item 3.12, which is alcohol-free zones. And I know some people get slightly, or may have got confused with where the alcohol-free zones we are talking about are on the basis of that's around roads, road reserves and those sorts of areas. We're not talking about on the parks and reserves like that. The parks and reserve is what the state government is talking about, relaxing potentially some of the rules around there. This is not that. This is in fact talking about the roadways, the pavements, footpaths and those sorts of things. So we're basically suggesting after consultation that we actually will keep the existing alcohol-free zones in situ where they are. There was a couple of extra ones that were sort of put forward, but on the advice from the police, they don't think that was actually necessary. So we're really going with what the police have advised. They want us to keep those in place. And the important point is they have to be renewed every 4 years. So that 4 years just coming up, and we need to get these done now so that they are in operation into the future for the next following 4 years. So the one exception, if you like, to that is the fact that cafes and other people can have a licence to occupy the footpath and utilise it. And from a liquor licensing point of view, they have to behave within the realms of the liquor licence that they're granted, which means the size, the shape, and the hours that they're open and so on. So they're two separate things. We're talking really about those areas which are not utilised by a cafe or a bar or something of that order. So I'm quite happy that we continue on with these. As I said, we've consulted with the community. There was only, I think 12 submissions in total, which included the police, and pretty comfortable with the outcome. So with that, I shall endorse the recommendations, which is to re-establish the existing alcohol-free zones for a period of 4 years in accordance with the ministerial guidelines. Item 3.13, the essential workers draft submission to the New South Wales Legislative Assembly Select Committee. And this is a draft submission to the Legislative Assembly on essential housing working. Now, the committee's inquiry will focus on establishing an appropriate definition of essential worker housing for the New South Wales Government to adopt, as well as identifying options to increase housing supply for essential workers. So it's quite a narrow area it's trying to target. I mean, essential workers come from a whole range of industries or sectors: education, medicine, emergency services, healthcare and other frontline services. So it's very important in these areas where cost of living and where housing is particularly expensive, that there is this affordable housing, particularly for the essential workers. So we've put a submission in, which is basically suggesting strongly to the government that they do establish an appropriate definition for essential worker housing, to adopt, including criteria for prioritising the worker cohorts and the geographical areas, and to also identify the options to increase housing supply for essential workers, which include but not limited to planning tools and reforms, incentives for development on privately owned land, opportunities within developments on government-owned land, and investigate reforms that promote fiscal sustainability, innovation and essential worker housing in perpetuity. So with that, happy to support the submission to the New South Wales Legislative Committee, and I will make that as a decision of council. Item 3.14, the community support programs. This is the annual $300,000 support program that the council offers to the community support grant program. It's grants up to $5,000. It's got to be matched by the proponent. It's a very popular program, and as you can see by the large numbers that actually put themselves forward, it demonstrates, I guess, its popularity. So we've been able to happily approve some 17. Unfortunately, some 13 have missed out, and they will be actually informed as the reasons as to why they've missed out. But there's 13, no doubt, happy people, which will be very happy when they hear the results of this. And that's another total of $47,000, which will be added to the earlier one done in July, and that takes us up to just under 70,000 of the 300,000 that will have been allocated at the end of July or August, is it? Not sure. Anyway, with that, I will make those as the decision of council. Item 3.15, I'm going to ask, I think, Emma again to just comment on that, which is the Administrator Expenses and Facilities Report, which I'm sure you had a great deal of interest in.
This report outlines the provision of facilities and expenses to the administrator for the period January to June this year, meeting the requirements of the Council of Facilities and Expenses policy. The payment for the full financial year is included in the financial statements that were considered earlier tonight. The administrator is remunerated and provided with facilities at the direction of the state government and within the relevant award and aligned to the policy for which there has been no instances of non-compliance and all expenses are within budget allocation. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. I won't comment on it. I will just note the Administrator Expenses and Facilities Report for that period, make that as a decision of council. Item 3.16, which is the minutes of the advisory group and committee meetings held in June. We did hold a number of meetings during that period, and the minutes are unconfirmed at this stage. They have been approved by their chairs, but it's not, of course, until their next meeting when they go to that committee that they can be finally approved. So with that, I will approve those those unconfirmed minutes of those advisory groups as shown on the screen. 3.17, it's the Council Advisory Committee's dissolution, and I think, again, Emma is speaking.
Thanks. Council's advisory committees are an important component of Council's engagement with the community. These groups have been providing valuable contributions and input. Advisory committees are typically only formed for the term of the Council. It is a standard practice across all councils that they are spilled at the end of each Council term. This allows the incoming elected body to determine which committees they want, the form that those committees should take, and the councillor representation on each of those committees. In response to the matter raised earlier by the public speaker, the Aboriginal Advisory Committee was established in mid-2023 and have only had the opportunity to meet a few times since established. Retaining the current committee will allow for an adequate period for the committee to effectively contribute to Council's decision-making. It is recommended that Council dissolves the committees as identified in the reports and extend appreciation to all committee members for their contribution during the term. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. Yes, where's Mr. Yes, there he is, straight up there, Mr. Armstrong. Look, I had some sympathy for your comments, but having been heavily involved in the setting up of this committee and in some of the selection of the members of this committee, it has only just got going. And it really doesn't make a lot of sense to have just got them going, they've just got educated for them to actually be tossed out. But I do accept you had a clear point there. But from my point of view, I think it's wise, as the staff have suggested, that we keep that committee going for the time being. Of course, a new council coming in are at liberty to change that or do anything that they want with that particular committee. So with that, and it is of course absolutely typical that all councils basically dissolve committees at the end of the term of councillors and then let a new council determine which committees they have. But on behalf of the council, I do want to thank the chairs of all those committees that have been in existence through this period. It's been pretty tumultuous, and for some of them, there hasn't been much to do, partly because of COVID, partly because of, I guess, the crisis that we had to go through. But certainly all the chairs I do want to thank, and those committee members that gave up their time because councils do value the advice that comes from these committees, and I certainly hope the new council will form some new committees and that they will take note of some of the advice. And with that, I will now move to adopt the resolutions as shown on the screens. We'll now move to the confidential item. You'll recall at the beginning of the meeting, I said that we would not go into break to go into a confidential item. There is one confidential item there, but I have read the report, I understand the report, and I agree with the recommendations. But I was concerned, particularly when I saw it for the first time, that the title really didn't say a lot. So I'm going to ask Mr. Loader just briefly explain what exactly is in here. He can't go into the detail for obvious reasons, but he can explain what it's about.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. So, as you're aware, Council's water utility has over 100,000 connections, which means that it's captured by the Security of Critical Infrastructure legislation, meaning that our water and sewer infrastructure is defined as critical assets. In July 2023, we developed a Critical Infrastructure Risk Management Program, which was endorsed by Council, and we've been actively implementing that framework. We've made significant progress in this space, which addresses our physical, cyber, personnel and supply chain risks. Our work was recently acknowledged at the statewide Mutual Risk Management Excellence Awards, where we were successful in taking out the awards for large regional metro council in the category of strategic risk initiative, as well as the overall risk award for large regional metro. This particular report is 12 months on from the initial program endorsement and now seeks council approval of the information required for the mandated annual report, which reflects on the implementation and progress of this program. The report remains confidential as it relates to matters that affect the security of the council and our assets, and it's recommended that council endorses the content of this report as a basis for the online annual report, which helps to ensure continued compliance with the Security of Critical Infrastructure Act. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Loader. So with that, I will note those recommendations and make those as a decision of council. And we've come pretty much to the end of the meeting, but I have been asked, just the acting chief executive apparently wants to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Thank you for giving me the floor. As this is your last council meeting as Central Coast Council's Administrator, I, as Acting CEO, would like to acknowledge and extend a warm thank you on behalf of Council and particularly the executive team. It's been an honour and a privilege to work alongside you, firstly as CEO and then as Administrator from the 26th of April 2021. I know that Mr. David Farmer, CEO, the executive team, staff and the community appreciate the time, hard work and effort you put into the role. Council has taken great strides forward over the past 4 years and we are proud of what has been achieved. Financial improvements have been significant and are ongoing, as well as delivering the financial recovery plan. Council has significantly improved its financial processes. We've done so while dealing with increased costs and revenue losses from floods, fires and the interruption and devastation of COVID-19. Although tough decisions needed to be made while under administration, they now form the foundations from which a new council will work to progress the community's needs and expectations. As council continues to manage its financials in a responsible manner and its financial position continues to improve, we are confident that the groundwork is in place for the incoming councillors to make sound decisions that propel this council forward. Again, thank you for your contribution to the realisation of a better region and we wish you all the best for the future.
Well, I'll have to say thank you, I suppose, won't I? Yeah, look, it's been a great, time. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Whereas I had no connections to the coast when I first came up here, I now have a daughter living up here with a grandchild that's going to come very timely at the end of October. So just in time, I've got some time to be a grandparent again with that particular daughter. And also my wife's got a niece who has two young ones, 3 and 2 up here as well. So we now have a connection. I guess I've got a permanent connection to the Central Coast after all this. But thank you guys for being involved. Loved some of the banter, some of the chat, and we'll see you upstairs for a cup of tea and coffee now. Thank you.